Today on African American Legends, we want to salute a true legend. On January 27, 2010, we lost my friend, Tuskegee Airman Lee Archer. We will go back and take a look at a past interview I had with Lee Archer on April 17, 2007. This is our tribute to Lee Archer. The African American Legend series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, education, and religion. We'll explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they'd been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is Lee A. Archer, Tuskegee Airman par excellence, our Tuskegee Airman ace. On March 29th, the Tuskegee Airmen received the Congressional Gold Medal in recognition of their pioneering contribution in World War II. As the ace of the Tuskegee Airmen, how did this make you feel, Lee?
Well, as a Tuskegee Airman, it made me feel very well. I think in my comments, I made it clear how I felt about it. The Congress of the United States, the House of Representatives, the Senate, speaks for the American people. And the president, he illustrates it and explains it to other people. So this is the people of America doing what I quoted 20 years ago, someone saying, thank you for your service, and this is our way of repaying you. My comment to the young man who stopped me 20 years ago was paid in full. And at the meeting in Washington where we received this Congressional Gold Medal, I turned to the president and said, for my actions and the actions of the Tuskegee Airmen in World War II, paid in full.
Now, the Congressional Gold Medal, as you know, is the highest award that Congress can vote. It requires 2/3 of the Senate and 2/3 of the House of Representatives. This bill presenting the Congressional Gold Medal to the Tuskegee Airmen was sponsored by Senator Carl Levin from Michigan and Congressman Charles Rangel from New York, our congressman. The bill passed unanimously in both houses. So in a sense, it says that the country, the Congress, and the president recognize our outstanding contributions. Now, as you look at this, Lee, you and I are both Tuskegee Airmen. What does this say about the society? What does it say about our contribution?
Well, it says that we never lived up to the Constitution, which said flat out that all men are created equal and are endowed by their creators with certain rights. We ducked and dodged, we Americans ducked and dodged on that for a number of years, where we criticized everybody else in the world when they did the same thing. It shows me that we are making progress, not as fast as some of us want it to be, but we are making progress. It'll soon come a time when, instead of us being African Americans and Asian Americans and other things, we'll all be just Americans for the books here. Now I understand why we categorize them, so we can watch what the government does and how it does it. And it's a good thing we do, because racism is still in some of the American people. But I think we're making good progress over the years, and the progress now is surprisingly good because it recognizes people in other areas other than entertainment.
Well, one of the things that I thought about, I know you think about, is the fact that this country has changed a lot in the past 60 years. Since there was a segregated army a segregated Air Force, a segregated Navy, when people like you and I couldn't stay in hotels in the South, had to ride in the back of the train. Many young people, and people not so young, don't recognize that that's the world we lived in, that's the world we fought in. So one of the questions that I frequently get asked, I'm sure you do too, is why would oppressed people like African Americans decide to volunteer for the Army and its most dangerous branch, the Air Force? What was your answer to that?
Well, my answer was that African Americans, or colored, or whatever you want to call us, that was current at the time, have always tried to defend this country. We love the country even if we don't love all the people in it. And so I felt myself, and I think that most of the young men that I lived with in New York, in Harlem, thought that the country was worth defending. With all of its faults, it was still one of the best places to be. And I confirmed this over 19 years living out of the country in different areas. In my mind, I'm convinced that it's still one of the best.
But how did you rationalize going to Alabama, where there was such racism we couldn't even walk the street sometime? How did you rationalize this with your love of the country?
Well, I think I tried to say it, Dr. Brown, when I said I love the country. I don't love all the people in it, but that. And the ones I don't love are those who try to separate us, segregate us, racist. And incidentally, in those days, racism and segregation was legalized. It was a part of the government program. I cannot believe, getting back to the military, that the 1925 War College study that made an explanation for some of the segregation, for the segregation in the military, separate on everything. Those men, some of them became very famous later on as military and political leaders, could not have been so stupid that they believed that study that they wrote, all right? So what was it? They were going along with the culture of the country at the time. And that was the difficulty, breaking the culture down. African Americans have served in every war America has had, and we've had a number of them. The first man to be killed in the Revolutionary War was not a white man. It was a black man in Boston. We served in the Civil War. We served in the Mexican-American War, or the Spanish War. We served in World War II, and served in World War I, I meant, on that one. So we've had a record of doing it. We have been the most faithful and constant people for this country of all the immigrants who came here after the American Indians settled it.
Well, in the case of the Tuskegee Airmen receiving this award, we received it in part because of our outstanding combat record, but also because of our press against segregation and racism. Many of us had sit-ins, many of us had protests, some of us got arrested and so on, to protest the segregation. So now the country is saying, by this medal, is that because of your strength and your courage and your fight against segregation and your success, your combat success, that we want to recognize you. And that opens the door. It's very much like Jackie Robinson opening the door in terms of integration. But it opens the door for the larger society to recognize that race is not a determinant of ability, patriotism, etc. So that the Tuskegee Airmen experience teaches us a lot. For example, there were two men who are our leaders. One was white, one was black. Right. At the Tuskegee Army Air Base, the commander was Colonel Noel Parrish, who was white, who, even though he had to abide by some of the rules of segregation, insisted that we be trained and treated fairly. And our leader in combat was Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., my hero, your hero, who provided the leadership for us to be the disciplined fighter pilots that we were. And the public should know that he was the first black to graduate from West Point in the 20th century, and while he was at West Point, no white person would talk to him socially. So those are two men who set the pace for us.
I believe that, and in fact, every time I speak to any group of young people, I try to put it in perspective that for every benefit we've had and for every racist we've had someone who treated us fairly. Talking about Noel Parrish, a lot of people don't remember that before Noel Parrish, there was a commander of the Tuskegee Army Air Base who was probably the worst racist there could be. He went along with the culture of the South and for the segregation. On a military base, he separated us from whites in everything. Commissary, PX, station, even in the theater, all right. So he left, and we got another Southerner by the name of Noel Parrish, as you say. And Parrish did nothing more than treat us fairly. Which was the most important factor in all of this. Our military commander, Ben Davis, and I don't care who knows it, as far as I'm concerned, he's a minor god for us. He went through West Point under abominable conditions. But it didn't embitter him against the government and what we were trying to do, accomplish. And he thought that if you did well, if you performed as well as everyone else and better than most, that you would be accepted. And his thoughts were correct.
And of course, his leadership in combat is really what earned us our reputation. As you know, our job was to escort the bombers that were delivering weapons, bombs over Europe, German-held Europe. And our record is that we didn't lose bombers. And tell us why Davis's leadership was so important in that.
Well, truthfully, I speak for myself, but I think I speak for most of the Tuskegee Airmen that flew from fort in combat.
450 combat pilots.
450, correct, that saw action overseas. A man like Benjamin O. Davis comes along once in a lifetime. We knew he had suffered more than most of us had suffered, from discrimination, etc. And he was the model on which most of us modeled ourselves. I know I wanted to be like him. I know I never would be, but I thought at least he was the model for me to be like him. And I think that most of the others. He was the most firm individual you could meet, a military man. And he was the fairest man you could meet, a military man. And in any conversation with me, you'll hear me bring up the thing of fairness. When I speak at the War College or down to Command and Staff College, I tell them, and they're not black officers, they're all sorts of officers, that being fair is probably the most important thing you can do as a military leader. And Benjamin Davis was fair. He was hard. He had a longer vision than most of us did. I really honestly believe that the Air Force, Army Air Corps in those days, I wanted to be in it because this was where the action was. This was the perception people had that this was a tough business. It was combat as it was in the old days, one-on-one, etc., like that. And Ben Davis didn't think about it that way. He thought about it as a service and duty to the country. He wasn't interested in glamour. You will never notice a lot of pictures of Ben Davis in combat, yet he flew all the missions. As an operational officer during that period of time, I know that he was once instructed not to fly so much. All right. he also knew how Americans react. When he was in the 99th in North Africa, one squadron, they had tried it and attempted to send him home because their record was misrepresented to the American people. And he came home, he fought that battle, and went back.
Let us take a moment now and look at a video of the presentation in the Rotunda of the Capitol, beginning with the President of the United States saluting us.
And I would like to offer a gesture to help atone for all the unreturned salutes and unforgivable indignities. And so on behalf of the office I hold and a country that honors you, I salute you for the service to the United States of America.
We are so overjoyed at the reception of the Congressional Gold Medal, and we want to thank the Congress, Senator Levin, Congressman Rangel, yes, sir, Sergeant, Congressman Rangel, and both the House and the Senate for voting unanimously to award this medal collectively to the pilots, the bombardiers, the navigators, the mechanics, the ground officers, the enlisted men and women who serve with the Tuskegee Airmen. Thank you so much. All right. All right.
Quite frequently in the past, I've met people who've seen me in uniform or noticed my wings on or something, and they said, "Thank you for your service to our country. We can never repay you." And I've always said thank you, and on behalf of the Tuskegee Airmen, thank you. But today is very, very special. At a time when the Congress of the United States, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, and the President of the United States say thank you, we can pay you back again. My comment is paid in full. Thank you.
That was certainly a thrilling moment for all of us in the Tuskegee Airmen, and I thought the audience would like to see a replica of the gold medal of the Tuskegee Airmen, which is going to repose in the Smithsonian Institution. It's one medal, it's gold, but they're replicas which we received and the public can acquire from the United States Mint. So this is something that really makes both of us very, very proud, and our families and all of our fellow Tuskegee Airmen very, very proud.
You can take it further than that, Dr. Brown. It makes all Americans very proud.
But as I said in my little talk, as we received the medal, today all Americans are proud, and you and I are both beneficiaries of that, and also part of the pride that accompanies the Tuskegee Airmen. Now, as we come to the close of the show today, what is the message that you as a Tuskegee Airman, I as a Tuskegee Airman, want to send to the youth of America?
Well, I think the Tuskegee organization is supposed to represent that. But I go back to another Tuskegee Airman by the name of Daniel James Jr., better known as Chappie, in a conversation when we were cadets. He said, he made a point that I think is very, very, very good. He said that if you are prepared, if you have your bags packed, and by bags he meant your education, your abilities, your training, your desire, and things like ambition, if they're ready, when opportunity knocks at the door, don't say, wait till I get my bags, because opportunity will go. He said, but no one can deny you your rights or your abilities or your education once you have them. So I say get them. If you are educated, if you are committed, if you have a determination, you should not let anyone else tell you what your abilities and what your place in society is. You make that decision. And I think that all young people of any race, any nationality, should live by that idea. I am ready, I am prepared, I am equal to everyone else in ability and sight, and they'll have a better day.
Now, the Tuskegee Airmen organization has a national scholarship program. They have over $1.5 million in that fund, and we award scholarships to mainly minorities who are interested in science, math, technology, because that's part of where the future is. In my own particular case, I do believe, as you, that the pride that we have shown as, at that time, young African Americans, hitting against that ceiling, not letting people stop us, is the thing that made the Tuskegee Airmen who we are. There are several hundred Tuskegee Airmen still alive. Some are mechanics, some are ground officers, some are enlisted men, and about 70 to 80 pilots. So I particularly am very proud of my relationship with the Tuskegee Airmen, and I know too that you are as well. So that as we go around the country, we speak to groups and give the message that we talked about. But a lot of them want to know about the combat. Tell us a little bit about some of the combat that existed with the Tuskegee Airmen.
Well, I don't frequently talk about combat. In fact, unless I'm roped into it,
like
I don't.
Now.
I have 3 sons, and one of them commented just a little while ago when someone asked about, tell us about your father. He said, I don't know about my father's combat record. He never talks to us about it. He said, every time I hear something, it's someone telling me that they heard him say it. You really can't express what happens in combat without feeling like a braggart. For instance...
Well, you are not a braggart. We know that you're the only African-American ace. You shot down 5 planes. Tell us how you shot down one of those planes.
Well, I started to say, it's a difficult thing to talk about. Number one is that I go on programs with other fighter pilots, and they talk about my kill here and my kill there.
A kill means shooting down a plane. Yeah.
Yes. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I never had a kill. I had a victory.
The victory is a better way.
And I accept that. And people say, oh, no. The combat that I flew 169 missions because of the segregation. I wouldn't have flown 169 if there hadn't been segregation. You flew more than 50, everyone else flew more than 50. This is something that we did because it was a requirement to keep us going there. We were faced with opportunities and made it. The only victory that was really impressive to me was my first one, when with a fellow by the name of Wendell Pruitt, who I was flying with on his wing, we picked up a German fighter and doing a series of wild turns back and forth, I ended up getting behind it. And I got a good burst in it, and the right wing kind of fell off, and the German pilot bailed out. And I flew to where he was in his parachute, and actually Pruitt actually thought for a minute that I was going to strafe the parachute or something. I don't know, because he kept saying, no, Lee, no. But that wasn't my intention. My intention and what I did was circled him until he landed on the ground. And then, per World War I stories, I buzzed down below him, pulled up and did a slow roll and wiggled my wings to say, glad you're safe. This was my idea of combat.
Well, it was mano a mano. Basically, it was a somewhat athletic, same time a combat activity.
Right.
And I think many of us who were fighter pilots felt the same way.
Right.
One of the things that Colonel Davis did, was to insist that we not shoot down people in parachutes, to try to be as fair as we could be, even though war is never fair. It really definitely shouldn't exist. As we summarize the Tuskegee Airmen experience, in just a few words, what has that experience meant to you?
Well, I'll tell you this. The Tuskegee Airmen experience is the basis for what I am.
And it
Everything
also
I've done since then has been based on the fact that I had the discipline, the training, the leadership of great men.
And the same thing is true for myself as a Tuskegee Airman and all the other Tuskegee Airmen. We've been talking with Lee A. Archer, Jr., Tuskegee Airman, about the Congressional Gold Medal that was awarded to the Tuskegee Airmen. Thanks for being with us, Lee.
Thank you for having me.